fight.
So you're saying at this point there is a strong likelihood that America will be dragged into that war in West Asia, which has been the widespread fear ever since Israel launched those attacks on Friday. Give us a sense of what that really means for America's position at this time, coming from a point where Trump spoke about stopping the wars around the world and then reaching a point where he has in a way enabled this Israeli onslaught on Iran. Of course, the nuclear talks have crumbled. Of course, we've seen how the objective here is to have Iran's nuclear program come to a halt. And now we have the American president earlier on also saying that, yes, it's important to let the two sides fight it out for a while before something can change. And now we've reached a point where it could reach another dangerous escalation to the point that America gets involved, which could also mean a bigger escalation beyond just West Asia.
Well, Netanyahu has been very open about his objective to pull America into this war even before the Israelis launched this surprise attack. That is, I don't think they're able to bring down Iran on their own, so they need the United States. The US didn't want to join initially, so it looks as if what they're going for is Israel fighting, it escalates, and then America has no choice, as they see it, than to join. Now, this obviously has a huge ramification for Trump domestically, but also the US reputation internationally. Domestically, it's worth noting that Trump was elected largely on a peace platform. He was going to end this forever wars, especially in the Middle East. He was going to bring an end to the war, the proxy war against Russia. So he hasn't done any of this. And now that he goes on and attacks Iran, this is obviously something he criticized both Obama and Biden for possibly starting a war with Iran. And now, again, it's on his watch that he will take America to war against Iran. Also, it's worth noting how deceptive he was, because when he was talking about the possibility, how close they were to a deal with the Iranians, in the middle of the negotiations, this is when they launched the attack on Iran, seemingly attempting to reassure the Iranians so they would lower their guard ahead of a surprise attack. And also the arguments being made by Trump, it doesn't really have much credibility. He keeps saying Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon. Well, Iran also said they don't want a nuclear weapon, and the American intelligence agencies also confirmed that Iran isn't pursuing a nuclear weapon. What Trump actually means is they're not allowed to have a civilian nuclear program, and all negotiations are linked to Iran decoupling from the rest of what Iran refers to as the resistance, so Hamas, Hezbollah, Yemen, and also, of course, limiting the range and capabilities of Iranian ballistic missiles. So, to a large extent, a capitulation is what they're asking from the Iranians. So, there's a lot of dishonesty, deception, and I think this has split the America First movement within the United States, and it also now makes the United States look very unreliable on the international stage. So this can have huge consequences.
Do you think at any point it was possible to actually avert this? Because we've been talking to a string of experts who've also been saying, well, the only man who can put an end to this is the US president, but he also has been maintaining that Iran had the time to sign that deal, and that time actually flew by. And on the other hand, there's such criticism that Iran has had of lacking transparency when it comes to its nuclear program.
Well, the Iranians had signed a deal. They had signed the JCPOA, which had very intrusive inspections. It was the United States that pulled away from it, and the Iranians were following their side of the commitment. It was the United States that never properly removed the sanctions, and it was the United States that eventually withdrew unilaterally. And as Trump also was quite open about, this was because he wanted to tie the deal into other things, such as, again, the ballistic missiles, their partnerships with other anti-Israeli groups in the region. So this has been, I think, yes, sabotage to some extent. And also we see now some good indications that even the arms control treaty the Iranians were following under the IAEA could have been exploited by the Israelis to get more intelligence on Iran's nuclear program, and also allow them to target nuclear scientists and various infrastructure, which we see now. So it can't really be overstated what a disaster this is for arms control and for diplomacy itself.
Right. One quick comment before I let you go, and that's exactly the point I was wanting to touch upon, where you see that it is a hit for diplomacy. Do you see any scope of diplomacy at this point? Important to also contextualize this, that Trump has left early from the G7 summit, which was supposed to be a platform of world leaders arriving at consensus. It was supposed to be an opportunity for those discussions to take place as well.
Well, at the G7, they said they wanted a de-escalation in all conflicts from Ukraine to Iran. However, that's also not really true. The Europeans do not really want the war to end in Ukraine to the extent it removes pressure from Ukraine and redirects it towards the Europeans. The same as what does de-escalation in Iran mean? As Trump said very clearly, he doesn't want a ceasefire. So what exactly is de-escalation? Usually when they say de-escalation, they mean in Ukraine that Russia should take a step back in the Middle East. It means that Iran should stop responding or retaliating against Israel. So it does seem to be somewhat empty words, because no one is ready to end the wars, but they still have to repeat the slogans. So they say de-escalation, but with no ceasefire and no negotiations. What exactly does it mean? So it does. Iran has indicated it's willing to end this conflict, but which was started by Israel and the United States. But then they have to stop the attacks on Iran. But so far it doesn't look like either the Americans or Israelis are ready to do this. So my expectation, therefore, is you will have further escalation.
All right, we're leaving it for the moment. Thanks very much for joining us. And China has become the latest country in fact, which has advised its nationals to leave the country as soon as possible. Beijing has advised its citizens to leave Israel via land borders as soon as possible. China has recommended Jordan as the preferred route while ensuring their personal safety. A notice issued by the embassy on Tuesday said that the Israel-Iran conflict continues to escalate, causing damage to civilian infrastructure and increasing civilian casualties, with the security situation growing increasingly severe. In recent days, many Chinese nationals in Israel have contacted the embassy via phone or via email to ask when the airport will reopen and when Henan Airlines flights will resume. Reports saying, according to the latest information obtained by the embassy, Israeli airspace remains closed and the government has extended the nationwide state of emergency until June 30th. The comments following China's earlier condemnation of Israel's attack on Iran, which started last week and has seen continued military action from both sides. Other countries that have released advisories for their citizens to evacuate the region include the UK, that advised Britons against all travel to Israel amid an escalation in the country's military activity with Iran. Germany's foreign ministry has issued a travel warning for Israel. Russia's foreign ministry advised Russian nationals against traveling to either Iran or Israel, citing security concerns. The ministry also urged citizens already in the affected areas to stay away from military installations and crowded public locations. Poland, Lithuania announced the evacuation of their citizens from Israel as tensions with Iran continue to escalate. The Netherlands also issuing separate travel advisory for Iran and Israel. The Vietnamese embassy in Israel has issued a formal advisory to the members of the Vietnamese community. Several hundred Australians have registered interest in leaving Israel and Iran, but have been advised to shelter where they are while the airspace remains closed. The foreign minister had said that while no flights are possible yet, given the risk of missile strikes on civilian aircraft, the government was working on a range of plans to help people leave when safe. In fact, amid the continuous barrage of missiles being fired from Iran, sirens have been blaring across Israel, with authorities urging civilians to remain in shelters. Residents of Tel Aviv took shelter in an underground parking lot as sirens blared during an Iranian missile attack today. The Israeli army issued a brief air raid warning for Tel Aviv and Beersheba in the south early this morning due to the incoming Iranian missiles. Israel has declared a national emergency in the wake of the retaliatory missile fire from Iran. At least 3 people were killed after a missile struck Israel's Petah Tikva on Monday. CCTV footage captured the moment a missile struck the Petah Tikva region, killing at least 3 people and injuring at least 12 civilians. At least 100 more were injured in Israel in the overnight blitz, part of a wave of barrages by Tehran in retaliation for Israel's ongoing attacks.
My building boom from Iran, very scary. I have 4 children, 4 boys, and we're very scary. But everyone is okay, and just.
The Bilinson Hospital in central Israel evacuated patients into repurposed underground levels. The hospital is now serving as emergency wards protected from Iranian missile attacks. Some 250 patients have been moved into underground wards, 200 more into protected zones in the hospital since the start of the conflict on June 13. The measure has been implemented as part of an emergency plan under direction from the Israeli Health Ministry.
We built a few years ago for those situations when we need to take all of our patients into secure place, shielded place, and still take care of them in the best way without interrupting it by alarms and bombs and etc.
When the war started, we came crashing down from the 6th floor to -4 below the ground. We were here about half an hour following the first alarm that sounded throughout the country.
In fact, amid the escalating war, the government of India has started relocating Indians in Tehran and has even issued 24/7 hotline numbers in India and Tehran. A 24/7 control room has been set up in India by the Ministry of External Affairs. The Embassy of India in Tehran has also set up a 24/7 emergency helpline for Indians in Tehran. This comes as the Indian government on Monday started relocating Indian students in Iran. There are roughly 10,000 Indians in Iran, including 6,000 students. As Tehran remains the epicenter of the Israeli strikes, the Indian embassy in Iran has issued another advisory for all Indian nationals and persons of Indian origin in Iran. The embassy has advised all those who can move out of Tehran using their own resources to move to a safe location outside the city. The Ministry of External Affairs said that all Indian students in Tehran have been moved out of the city for reasons of safety through arrangements made by the embassy. In a statement issued earlier, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs said that the embassy in Tehran is continuously monitoring the security situation and engaging Indian students in Iran to ensure their safety. Russian Ural's crude is the workhorse of Moscow's war chest, and it's back in the headlines now after it surged nearly 15% following the flashpoint in West Asia. But as the crude gets dearer, the question now is, who is buying Russia's sanctioned oil? Russia and Iran are among the world's largest producers of crude oil and are under strict sanctions from the West. In fact, Russian oil is checked through price caps and shipping limits, while Iranian oil is embargoed. Before the Iran-Israel escalation, it traded around $57 a barrel, and now it trades around $65 a barrel. Israel's strike on Iranian energy infrastructure and the threat of disruption to the Strait of Hormuz have injected fresh volatility in the global crude oil market. China and India are widely considered to be the two biggest buyers of Russian crude, often purchasing it at a steep discount. Most of it moves under the radar, labeled as crude from Oman or Malaysia, complicating the crude oil trade. In Iran's case, China remains one of its biggest buyers. The fact that Russian and Iranian oil still flow into global markets has kept prices in check, but the Strait of Hormuz is key here. Any disruption on this route is likely to take crude oil prices shooting above $130 per barrel. And according to analysts, for now, experts say crude oil markets have priced in risk premiums from the current conflict, but they could enter a new phase if they continue to escalate. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Canada to attend the G7 summit. His visit there, a first in over a decade, comes after a period of friction between New Delhi and Ottawa. Prime Minister Modi, who is on that three-nation tour, arrived in Canada from Cyprus at the invitation of the Canadian Prime Minister. The invitation signals the new government's intent to repair the bilateral ties. The gathering on the 16th and 17th of June is the Prime Minister's sixth consecutive participation in the G7 summit. A statement by India's Ministry of External Affairs said the Prime Minister will exchange views with leaders of G7 countries, other invited outreach countries, and heads of international organizations on crucial global issues, including energy security, technology, and innovation. Besides, Prime Minister Modi will hold several bilaterals on the sidelines of the summit, coming over a month after India's Operation Sindoor that targeted terror infrastructure in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir in retaliation for the Pahalgam terror attack.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
President, why are you leaving the G7?
We've got a bit more work to do, so we'll go do it over dinner.
Time now for a quick break, and coming up on the other side, Israel continues its relentless attack on Iran with airstrikes pounding Tehran's nuclear and military infrastructure. We're getting you more on that in just a bit.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us. You are watching the latest coming in at this hour. A quick look at the top stories making headlines. Iran says it destroyed strategic positions in Tel Aviv and Haifa overnight using drones with precise destruction and targeting capabilities. Intense strikes raged for a fifth night into Tuesday. Israel says it has killed Iran's senior-most military commander, Ali Shadmani, the wartime chief of staff, in an overnight strike on the command center in the heart of Tehran. Shadmani is claimed to be the closest figure to the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. US President Donald Trump says the reason for his early return from the G7 summit in Canada was much bigger than a ceasefire. In a social media post, Trump denied that he left early to work on an Iran-Israel ceasefire. China accuses President Trump of pouring oil on Iran-Israel conflict. Says Trump's fanning the flames, making threats and mounting pressure will not help to promote the de-escalation of the situation. Gaza Civil Defense Agency, Israeli drones fired at citizens at an aid distribution center, killing at least 47 people and injuring more than 200 in Khan Yunis in the south. Claims Israeli tanks also fired shells at a crowd of thousands of people. Indian markets trade lower as they track weak global cues. Both the Sensex and the Nifty trade below important psychological levels, but defense talks buck the trend. Oklahoma City Thunder fend off a late comeback from the Indiana Pacers to win 120-109. They now lead the series 3-2 and are just one victory away from the NBA championship.
Williams has been hot all night, falling away.
Ayatollah Khamenei tweeted almost every day, "Death to Israel."
I want to see no nuclear weapon in Iran.
Israel continues its relentless attack on Iran with airstrikes pounding Tehran's nuclear and military infrastructure. But as the conflict drags on, it's becoming clear that Israel will not achieve its objective of fully dismantling Iran's nuclear program unless it takes out the Fordow nuclear facility. Fordow is the heart of Iranian nuclear program, built deep inside a mountain and protected by strong air defenses. Fordow is one of Iran's two main uranium enrichment sites. The facility houses uranium enriched up to 60%, just below the level needed to make a nuclear bomb. Israel fears that if the Fordow nuclear facility remains operational, even after the airstrikes, it would fail in its mission. But the problem is, Israel does not have the weapons to destroy Fordow. It would need special bombs called bunker busters, which can break into underground structures. Bunker busters are specialized bombs which are designed to destroy underground bunkers or heavily fortified structures. They are equipped with delayed fuses to ensure that they only detonate after reaching their target, weighing between 4,000 to 30,000 pounds. Bunker busters can penetrate up to 30 meters of earth or 6 meters of reinforced concrete. The GBU-28 and GBU-37 bunker buster bombs weigh between 4,000 to 5,000 pounds, while the GBU-57 is the largest bunker buster, weighing 30,000 pounds and can penetrate up to 200 feet of reinforced concrete. According to an Axios report citing two officials, Israel has asked the Trump administration to join its war against Iran in order to decimate Tehran's nuclear program. As per the report, an idea raised by Israeli officials with the US is to jointly take out Fordow. The Israeli ambassador to the US expressed a similar strategy. In an interview with Fox News, the Israeli envoy said that the Israeli operation has to be completed with the elimination of Fordow, which the envoy believed posed the greatest danger to Israel. But Israel specifically lacks bunker buster bombs and large bomber aircraft like the US's B-2 bombers, both of which are needed to destroy the Fordow enrichment site. The B-2 strategic stealth bombers are capable of penetrating advanced air defense systems, conduct precision strikes, and can carry 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. And enough to strike at the heart of Iran's nuclear ambitions and severely paralyze Tehran's nuclear ambitions. Israel and Iran traded deadly fire again on Tuesday, a fifth day of strikes, fueling fears of a drawn-out conflict that could engulf West Asia. These are the latest developments at this point. Israel's military claimed to strike a staffed command center in the heart of Tehran, killing Ali Shadmani, the wartime chief of staff and close aide of Khamenei. The Israeli military said Shadmani had commanded both the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Iranian armed forces. The Israeli army also released footage of what it said were strikes carried out on surface-to-surface missile storage and launchers, and surface-to-air missile launchers and UAV storage sites in western Iran. Loud booms were heard over Tel Aviv and Jerusalem Wednesday morning. Air raid sirens sounded in several parts of Israel as the military warned of incoming Iranian missiles. The White House has insisted that U.S. forces remain in a defensive posture in West Asia despite a military build-up over the Israel-Iran war. White House spokesperson said on social media that American forces are maintaining their defensive posture, and that has not changed. White House's comment came after a warning from President Trump for people to evacuate Tehran, which raised speculation that the United States may be readying to join Israel in attacking Iran. But both White House and Pentagon officials reiterated that U.S. forces in the region remained in a defensive posture. Iran state television was hit by an Israeli strike. Images show the Islamic Republic of Iran broadcasting IRIB building on fire. Iran condemned Israel's attack on the state TV building in Tehran as a war crime and called on the UN Security Council to take action. The incident occurred as a news anchor was broadcasting live. The Bazan Group has its oil refinery in the Haifa Bay. All its facilities have been shut down after an Iranian strike. 3 people were killed in the missile strike on the refinery overnight. Bazan is currently working with the Israel Electric Company to resume electric supply to the facility. Iranian media rejected Israel's claim of destroying Iranian Air Force's F-14 fighter jets, saying that the targeted aircraft were decoys placed at Tehran's Mehrabad International Airport. And amid the continuous barrage of missiles being fired from Iran, sirens have been blaring across Israel, with authorities urging civilians to remain in shelters. Residents of Tel Aviv took shelter in an underground parking lot as sirens blared during an Iranian missile attack today. The Israeli army issued a brief air raid warning for Tel Aviv and Beersheba in the south early this morning due to the incoming Iranian missiles. Israel has declared a national emergency in the wake of retaliatory missile fire from Iran. At least 3 people were killed after a missile struck Israel's Petah Tikva on Monday. CCTV footage captured the moment a missile struck the Petah Tikva region, killing at least 3 people and injuring at least 12 civilians. At least 100 more injured in Israel in the overnight blitz, part of a wave of barrages by Tehran in retaliation for Israel's ongoing attacks.
My building boom from Iran, very scary. I have 4 children, 4 boys, and we're very scary. But everyone, it's okay, and just...
The Belinson Hospital in central Israel evacuated patients into repurposed underground levels. The hospital is now serving as emergency wards protected from Iranian missile attacks. Some 250 patients have been moved into underground wards and 200 more into protected zones in the hospital since the start of the conflict on June 13. The measure has been implemented as part of an emergency plan under direction from the Israeli Health Ministry.
We built a few years ago for those situations when we need to take all of our patients into secure place, shielded place, and still take care of them in the best way without interrupting it by alarms and bombs and etc.
When the war started, we came crashing down from the 6th floor to -4 below the ground. We were here about half an hour following the first alarm that sounded throughout the country.
And earlier, we were joined by defense expert Peter Kuznick and independent journalist Anthony Lowenstein. Take a listen in to the perspectives that they shared with us.
Failure of deterrence, you could say that it is a failure of deterrence. It's a preemptive attack based upon a crisis that didn't really exist. Iran was a year away from a bomb under the original Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA. But Donald Trump blew that up. And then he's trying to negotiate a new deal, but he insists that Iran give up its legally mandated right to enrich uranium. Under the original deal, Iran could enrich uranium to 3.67%. As a signatory to the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, Iran has that right. But then Trump draws this line and says no enrichment at all, which Iran could never accept, and which Trump should have known that Iran would never accept. So in a sense, that Trump initiated this. Biden foolishly never went back to the original nuclear deal.
Absolutely. I mean, is it a complete collapse in any kind of red lines? I mean, every serious international law expert in the last days has said that this Israeli attack was illegal from day one. I mean, let's be clear. Israel has been wanting, when I say Israel, Netanyahu and many people around him, for literally 30 or 40 years to attack Iran. And if you look at these headlines since pretty much the 1980s or 90s, they are always saying the same thing. Iran is on the verge of a nuclear weapon. There's been zero evidence of that ever happening. And we all remember, those of us with a long memory, 2002, 2003, around the Iraq War, where Israel, the US, many Western allies alleged that Iraq, Saddam Hussein, had nuclear weapons. No nuclear weapons were found. Zero. It was a war based on a lie, and around 1 million Iraqis were killed in the process. We are at the similar point here 20 plus years after. None of this is to deny Iran's repression, authoritarianism. None of that is to deny that. I have Iranian friends who loathe this regime with a passion because they themselves are being negatively impacted either outside Iran or within. However, virtually everyone I speak to is saying none of that means that we support strikes on Iran, because if the Iranian regime collapses tomorrow, next week, there is no plan. What happens to the 90 million Iranians who are facing a deeply uncertain future? There are many pro-US and pro-Israel Iranian forces claiming that they will represent Iran or they will run Iran. They have no legitimacy within Iran itself. So whenever people see this in the media, that pro-war Iranians, either in Iran or outside, are talking about supporting Israeli strikes, remember, none of these groups have any legitimacy or support within Iran itself. So the day after, like we're seeing in Gaza, where there is still no day after, where this is ongoing massacres and genocide has been continuing for nearly a year, there is no plan. So to believe the US or Israel or European states that somehow these strikes on Iran are legitimate are wholly inappropriate and wrong.
US President Donald Trump left the G7 summit in Canada a day early, heading back to Washington. Trump's helicopter lifted off from the summit venue in the Canadian Rockies to take him to his plane shortly after G7 issued a joint statement calling for de-escalation on Iran. while stressing Israel had the right to defend itself in the escalating West Asia crisis. The statement said, "We affirm that Israel has a right to defend itself. We reiterate our support for the security of Israel. We also affirm the importance of the protection of civilians. Iran is the principal source of regional instability and terror. We have been consistently clear that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon," quote unquote. Earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron claimed Trump was considering the prospect of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, calling Macron a publicity-seeking president. Trump said that his French counterpart had mistakenly said that he had left the G7 summit in Canada to go back to DC to work on a ceasefire. The US president further said Macron had no idea why he was on his way to Washington, adding that it had nothing to do with ceasefire, but something much bigger than that. And this is not the first time. At the 2018 summit, coincidentally also hosted in Canada, Trump left the gathering of world leaders to meet with North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un. Owing to his early departure, Trump will miss important discussions, including that on the Russia-Ukraine war. But he kicked off the summit with a big statement on the war. He had said it would never have begun had Russia continued to be a part of Group of Seven, which used to be Group of Eight, until Moscow's removal in 2014 following its annexation of Crimea. He called it a mistake and pinned the blame on former US President Barack Obama and former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago. But it didn't work out that way.
And the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Canada to attend the G7 summit. His visit to Canada, a first in over a decade, comes after a period of friction between New Delhi and Ottawa. Prime Minister Modi, who is on a three-nation tour, arrived in Canada from Cyprus at the invitation of the Canadian Prime Minister. The invitation signals the new government's intent to repair the bilateral ties. The gathering on 16th and 17th of June is the Prime Minister's sixth consecutive participation in the G7 summit. A statement by India's Ministry of External Affairs said the Prime Minister will exchange views with leaders of G7 countries, other invited outreach countries, and heads of international organizations on crucial global issues, including energy security, technology, and innovation. Besides, Prime Minister Modi will hold several bilaterals on the sidelines of the summit, coming over a month after India's Operation Sindoor that targeted terror infrastructure in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir in retaliation for the April 22nd Pahalgam terror attack. Russian airstrikes on Ukraine's capital killed at least 14, including a US citizen. This according to local media reports. Over 40 others have been injured. Earlier, Kiev's mayor warned enemy UAVs are heading towards Kiev from three directions, adding there is also a missile threat. He urged residents to not leave shelters. The Ukrainian president's chief of staff slammed the new Russian strikes on residential buildings in Kiev, saying on Telegram that Moscow was continuing its war against civilians. The attack coincides with the G7 summit currently underway in Canada. US President Trump kicked off the summit with a big statement on the Ukraine war. He said it would never have begun had Russia continued to be a part of Group of 7, which used to be Group of 8, until Moscow's removal in 2014, following its annexation of Crimea.
The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago. But it didn't work out that way.
As Trump is departing the summit a day early amid the escalating tensions between Israel and Iran, he would miss meeting his Ukrainian counterpart. Zelensky had earlier said he wanted to discuss buying U.S. weapons with Trump. And while addressing a press conference with his Austrian counterpart, Zelensky said he cannot imagine and does not want to imagine how to live and fight without the help of the US. He also highlighted how it was important for the US and Europe to make sure that the alliance between the two does not fall apart.
I think we all have to work to make sure that the alliance between America and Europe doesn't fall apart. And we all have an interest in that. Then the continent, I think, is more or less safe. And it is not easy to threaten such an alliance from anyone, not just Russia. So I think everyone is interested in this union, and we are also interested in this union.
The Oklahoma City Thunder are one win away from their first NBA title in 46 years. The Thunder beat the Indiana Pacers on Monday to take a 3-2 lead in the NBA Finals. Host Oklahoma held off a comeback from the Indiana Pacers to go ahead in the series for the first time. The NBA MVP, Alexander, provided 31 points, but it was Oklahoma's Williams who was the star of the show. Williams scored 40 points, his best ever haul in a playoff game. The Pacers reduced an 18-point deficit to just 2 points in the second quarter, but Williams and Alexander ensured that the Thunder reclaimed control of the game in the second half. Thunder eventually completed a 120 to 109-point win. They can win just their second NBA championship in history with a victory in Game 6 on Thursday night in Indianapolis.
He's up by Neesmith. He's going to go to the fadeaway. On balance, on point.
And with that, it's time for a very short break. Coming up on the other side, Israel's military claimed to strike a staffed command center in the heart of Tehran, killing Ali Shadmani, the wartime chief of staff and close aide of Khamenei. We're getting you more on this in just a bit.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency.